Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group Biweekly Sync. It is November 7th, 2019. The year is just flying by, and we'll now go to our agenda. So normal agenda for us, except a little bit different because we don't have any community demos. What we do have is Vesa and Luca from the SharePoint PG to tell us, do a roll-up on some of the big announcements from Ignite that's happening this week. So going to check that out. But first, we'll have our standard updates on the patterns and practices libraries. So we'll go through those real quick and get right to the Ignite content, which I know everybody is excited about. And I'll just remind you, if you see me at Ignite, run away. That's not me. I'm not there. It's a lizard in a Patrick suit. So we'd like to talk about our opportunities to participate in PnP SPFx and the JavaScript Special Interest Group. Of course, we really like the demos and encourage all of you to demo your great work out there that you're doing for your customers and your companies. Those could involve anything around SharePoint Framework, web parts, application customizers, provisioning, anything you create. And of course, love to see it if you involve any of the PnP work. So PnPjs, the CLI, the controls, or the Yeoman generator. Great to see those demos. And I know we all learn a ton from the folks that do the demos on the call, and we appreciate those. So if you're interested in doing a demo, please reach out to myself or Vesa, and we'll get you on the schedule just as soon as we can. Just a heads up, we are booked out for a little bit, so if we can't get you on like the immediately next call, we will get you on a future call, so don't be discouraged. Do get on the list, sign up. We'd love to have you demo on the call. I've had some great demos this year and look forward to all the great demos coming up in the future. We also encourage you to contribute on GitHub. All of the @PnP projects welcome your contributions, and those could take the form of reporting issues, helping us out by submitting pull requests, or helping out with issues and questions, which is sometimes really valuable because it's we might not have time to get to someone's question right away. You might see it in any of the issues lists, and if you happen to know the answer, you can save a ton of time and really help somebody else out by answering their question there on GitHub. So really appreciate that. And of course, pull requests are always welcome from folks to add functionality or fix bugs, any of those kinds of things. And then finally, we always welcome as well feedback in the work we're doing. So how are these calls? How are the documentation around our various projects or around SharePoint All Up? Really appreciate that feedback. Would ask folks to please ensure you're on mute. And then we also like feedback on where we can help, where we can have additional impact. If you see gaps in the work we're doing, I'd love to hear about those, and maybe we can fill them. Maybe it's an opportunity for a new project to get rolled out. It really depends on what that is. And then, of course, positive feedback is okay too. Let us know the things you like that we're doing, and we can do more of them. So love to hear that positive feedback as well from folks out there in the community. So moving forward. And just some quick links, SharePoint Dev Docs, aka MS SPDev-Docs, is your link to the all-up SharePoint developer documentation. So whether you're getting started with SharePoint Framework or you need to look up some stuff about classic web parts, all the developer documentation is rolling up to that URL. So definitely check that out. As well, we've got aka.ms/spdev-videos. That'll take you to our SharePoint PnP YouTube channel, where you can see a whole set of videos on topics, such as provisioning, such as getting started with PnPjs, such as getting started with the CLI. And then we have a series of videos around different topics, again, provisioning or how to use the modernization tooling, things like that. Great series of videos, great way to get started on a lot of these topics. Check out the videos. And as well, you can find all the recordings for all of the calls we do, such as this one, there on the YouTube channel. So you can find those there and review them or watch them if you didn't have a chance to join us when we were doing it live. And then as well, finally, the SharePoint Dev Issues list, SPDev-Issues, that'll take you to a GitHub issues list where you can report issues around modern SharePoint development, the modern experience, specifically around SharePoint Framework, issues you might be having there, ideas you have to improve that. Love to get those issues in, love to hear from folks on what we could be doing better and what opportunities we have to improve. So appreciate that. And with that, we'll roll into our updates around the @PnP libraries. So PnPjs client-side libraries, the beta is now available. That's going to be officially announced, I think, a little bit later today by Vesa at Ignite. But just telling you folks in this call a little early, that beta is now available. It's out there. It's actually been out there for a few days. We just haven't told anybody. But you can help us test that out. There's a pinned issue at the top of the issues list. This is in the PnP JS repository. So you can see some details there. But we're really looking for help in three main areas: bugs, docs, and the transition guide. So obviously, if something's broken and not working, that sounds like a bug, please do let us know about those so we can get them fixed. Docs, we've made a big effort to improve the documentation for V2 from what we had in V1. So we'd really appreciate if you see gaps in the docs, something's missing, something's unclear. Please do let us know about that. And then the transition guide, we've updated our transition guide to go from PnPjs V1 to V2. As you work through updating your projects, please let us know if we're missing some details or steps or some gotchas stuff, because we don't always know what everybody's done out there in their projects. So we might have some stuff that we missed in that transition guide. So please let us know there. And of course, we would absolutely welcome pull requests to help fix anything you might find as well, or stuff that other folks might find. And in all cases, please do note in your issue it is related to V2. That'll really help us with the tracking and to ensure we're getting things fixed appropriately for V2. And then finally, I want to announce our support plan after the V2 release. So whenever we actually release version 2, we're going to maintain feature parity between V1 and V2 for 3 months. So if we add a new feature to V2, we'll as possible, put that in V1. And then after those 3 months, we're going to support V1 for an additional 3 months after that. So a total of 6 months of ongoing support for V1. And then after that period, we'll of course accept PRs from folks for V1 to fix things you might find or to add features. We'll always welcome that, but official support will have ended and our priorities will fully switch over to V2 at that time. And did want to remind folks, we are still going to have the V1 releases. So we'll have a V1 release going out on November 8th. That'll be a fairly small release, but there'll be a few good bug fixes in there. Most of my time and effort and a lot of the community time and effort has been focused on V2 over the last month. Links down there at the bottom, pnp.github.io/pnpjs takes you to the existing documentation. You can now find in the header there a link to the V2 beta docs, so you can check those out. Hashtag PnPjs on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter at MediocreBowler. And I don't post a ton of stuff, so it'll mostly be updates about PnPjs if you're interested in that. Moving on to the CLI. Version 2.2.0 has just been released with support for retrieving Office 365 group activities, removing flows, adding Power Apps solution references, updating SharePoint app pages, enabling web and site features, retrieving Yammer networks, and retrieving Teams message replies. So a lot of great new features in there. So if you are using the CLI, definitely get the latest version 2.2.0, and that'll help you, in your day-to-day tasks and doing some of these new tasks. And for those of you not familiar with the CLI, it is a cross-platform command line interface for managing resources across Office 365, things like SharePoint, Yammer, Teams, and really great. Can help you script out building development environments, help you maintain development environments, help with testing. The features or the possibilities are endless. So for sure, check out the CLI, and it's another great tool in your tool belt of development. And you can always install the latest beta from npm install-g at pnp/office365-cli at next. We'll always get you the latest beta, aka MS0365CLI. For more information and documentation, hashtag Office365CLI on Twitter. There's a Gitter channel, and as well, again, that link to the docs. For the SPFx reusable components, no big updates, but want to remind folks these are out there, and there's two separate libraries. We've got the property controls and the React controls for Controls React. The first one is a set of React controls designed for use in the property pane of your web parts. So that's a great way to introduce a lot of advanced functionality to the web part editing experience very quickly and easily. It's all styled with the Office UI fabric, so it's going to blend in to the great out-of-the-box look of SharePoint. It's going to give you a nice polished look, as well as a lot of great functionality, things like list pickers, people pickers, term pickers, so manage metadata term pickers, all exist. You save yourself a bunch of time and just drop those right into your projects. And as well, the controls react. These are a set of controls designed to work in the body of your web parts, or as well would work in application customizers just as well. So definitely check those out, and great way to jumpstart your project. And I do see there are a few folks having some trouble seeing the presentation. There's not a whole lot we can do from our side. We're sharing it straight through Teams. So if you can connect and reconnect, that might fix it. And if not, unfortunately, perhaps when Vesa starts sharing his screen for the second part of this call, you'll be able to see then. I'm not sure what we'll be able to do there. So, and then finally, the SPFx Generator is a community-based generator for SharePoint Framework projects that extends the Microsoft SharePoint Framework generator. So under the hood, you're going to get an out-of-the-box SharePoint project, in the sense that you'll have all the same Microsoft dependencies and Microsoft libraries under the hood. But then you have the option with this generator to add a whole bunch of features that aren't available in the out-of-the-box generator. So support for things like handlebars and Vue and Angular, as well as adding in lots of libraries right out of the box for PnPjs, jQuery, the React controls, and the property controls that we talked about, and some other great features. So another great tool in your tool belt. Definitely check that out to get a jump start on building or starting your SharePoint Framework projects. And then you've got install npm install-g at pnp/generator-spfx will get you the latest version via npm. Documentation link there, aka MS PnP Generator. And then there is as well a Gitter channel. You can chat about the generator and check that out. And then for all these projects, we absolutely welcome your participation and encourage you to, if you're excited about the generator or the controls, the CLI or PnPjs, would love to have you participate, get involved, and help build new features and enhance those projects. So moving right in, and the exciting part of our call, all our call is exciting, but the big part of our call today is updates from Ignite around SharePoint Framework and what's going on, what's the latest, what are the newest announcements, and Vesa.
Just a bit of a warning, I do not see any of the chats, so maybe it's just actually, Luca, if you can put your computer on the side. So. Yes. If there's any chats or questions, we can jump on those as well. So what I wanted to do with this one is, let's first actually introduce you. What is your role, Luca, in the work what you do? What's my role and what's your role? Let's see what I actually answer on that one.
I do stuff. So I am program manager in the SharePoint product group, and I own basically the SharePoint framework. And I'm the PM that owns the entire SharePoint framework for SharePoint Online and Microsoft.
Yeah, and also for SharePoint 2019 and SharePoint 2016.
That is very true.
It is the whole setup. So Luca is the PM, the principal program manager, responsible of the delivery of the SharePoint framework. And then there's a separate set of engineers and engineering managers who actually implement the stuff. So Luca is the person who actually controls what is being done. And now
I am a PM, I tell stories.
Sure. And my role is then making sure that whatever he and Luca, Pat, and the engineers are coming up with are actually being transformed for the audience, and people can actually build stuff using that. So documentation, guidance, videos, all of that stuff. I've spec'd few features here and there, but majority of the actual specking comes from Luca and Pat, because that's just nature of the job. So I don't have a time, but Luca is based on Redmond, and it works more efficiently that way. Just a bit of a warning again, we cannot unfortunately see the chat, so let's see if we can figure that one out.
Yeah, I'm trying to log off and log on. You can see.
Now let's actually move on the slides. So a few slides which we're going to show later today in the PnP session, and then just recap some of the success what we've been having. First of all, SharePoint PnP itself, aka MSSP PnP, it is definitely the way to get started on SharePoint development, but not only on SharePoint development, also on Teams development. If you're writing Teams using the SharePoint framework technologies, we're going to talk about that one and the future of that one later on within this chat. And also Office add-ins. Office add-ins are coming to the SharePoint framework development experience as well. So SharePoint PnP is providing guidance for all of that. Now, That does mean that, yes, we are considering renaming again SharePoint PnP to be something more broader, because it just makes sense. Calling this only to concentrate on SharePoint is not true anymore, especially now that we're extending the SharePoint framework across the Microsoft 365. But anyway, that's more than 500 samples, 1,000 contributors in GitHub. It was awarded as a reference model how we work with MVPs. More than 66,000 visitors, 28,000 tenants using open source components like PnPjs, which Patrick mentioned over there. And 2.5 million watch time minutes in the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in learning any of this stuff, please use these assets because they will help you to be successful. Now, before we go to the SharePoint framework, I just wanted to promote this one as well. And I'm actually going to do a live demo out of it as well. Because that doesn't take too long, but it is super important thing to realize what's available, because this relates on the environments which you use when you implement SharePoint Framework or Graph or experiences. So you can actually really easily take advantage of our beautiful demo designs, which we used in Ignite 2019 in your implementation or in your demos as well. And it's nothing more than actually going to the lookbook and basically then clicking that I want this design to be applied or created to my tenant as well. So you can actually install these to your normal tenants. You can install them to your dev tenants, and there is a ways of getting a free tenant from Microsoft. So it's a great way of understanding how the modern SharePoint actually is being built. Now, let me actually do a quick demo on that one first, and then we get back on the SharePoint framework side of the house. Let me go lookbook.microsoft.com. So quite simple URL to remember, lookbook.microsoft.com, which currently contains these designs, which are only relevant, to be honest, they only have a designs only for SharePoint, but we're looking into potentially extending this to include also team structures and other solution structures as well, because the engine behind the scenes does absolutely support that as well. The whole point of the lookbook is that you can actually see cool looking designs which can be built using modern SharePoint in SharePoint Online. One important thing to realize, this works only on SharePoint Online. You can have a look on the design, let's say something relatively simple, retail operations. You can have a look on that design. That's a cool looking design, cool looking pictures and all of that. You can have a look on what features have been enabled on that design, what kind of web parts and settings are available on that design. But more importantly, there's a really cool button which is called Add to Your Tenant. So clicking that one will then go through an authentication flow. For now, you need to be a tenant administrator to make this actually work, and we do know that we need to work on that one. We do have a potential direction on reducing that requirement in the future, but it is a requirement for now. So you can get an easily Office 365 developer tenant, and for example, then you are a tenant administrator and you're able to deploy these to your tenant. Now, in here, filling up the form, I'm just going to set up an email address, for example, an email address which is getting notified when the site is created, what's the title of the site, and then the URL. Let's see if the retail operations is already taken. Probably tested this on the tenant, I'm not sure. Oh, it's not taken, cool. So I can actually then click provision. It's going to validate my tenant and a setup. And after a while, 1, 2, 3, 4, there we go. Confirmed. It's going to tell me that it's going to take a certain amount of time and confirm, and the site creation process has started. Now, what's important to realize, you can create as many tenants, as many site collections, as many templates. You can select multiple ones at the same time. You don't have to wait this to complete. You can actually go to another design already and start provisioning those to your tenant as well if you want. And the whole point is that you can then get really cool looking designs which you can use for, let's say, pre-sales purposes, demo purposes, whatever you want these to be used. Oop, let me go to landing 1, 2, 3 is a good example, because I know that's actually available. And this is a good example of one of the templates which is available from the provisioning of the lookbook design and the provisioning service. And then you can use this as a starting point or as a demo environment or whatever you want. So the whole point here is that using the lookbook Microsoft.com, you actually get exactly the same demo tenants and demo designs, which we used even in Ignite 2019 this way. And that's pretty cool. Same designs as what Jeff Teeper used on his Monday keynote are available for you when you're creating demos or explaining how modern SharePoint works for your, let's say, manager or for your organization as well. So really cool stuff. Good. Let me get back on the slides. So moving on more on the SharePoint Framework side of the house. By the way, Patrick, if you're watching the chat, if there's any let's say super urgent discussions, let's see if I can actually open up that.
A lot of people said yes. They could see your screen. That's the latest update.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's precisely okay. Cool. Actually, let's see. I can get this to the I can go to the mobile so I can see if there's any questions from anybody. Now, let's go to the SharePoint Framework side of the house. Just to update on the latest statistics, like we said many times in the past, these are kind of graphics which do actually show the real-life usage of SharePoint Framework, but we do not provide actual metrics because our metrics model is slightly, it's not rocket science, but it doesn't mean a thing for, it's not meaningful outside of Microsoft. But these charts basically show how fast and how the usage of SharePoint Framework is getting extended or used more widely in SharePoint Online. What's actually really interesting, I have no idea which caused this. We haven't analyzed this in detail yet. This week, we did quite a significant jump, starting already from Monday, around the SharePoint Framework usage per user in SharePoint Online in global scale. So we do not know exactly what's causing that, but it's good to see that people are adapting and using things more and more. So really nice looking charts, and the adoption is growing in a nice curve in both sides, absolutely. Now, let's go to the SharePoint Framework side of the house. So these are familiar slides from Luca's session yesterday for those who were actually in the Ignite, because I saw some of the people joining who were sitting in the audience in Ignite as well. So nothing new for those people, but let's recap what's actually happening. So SharePoint Framework works in a classic pages, which is a good thing to understand as well. So if you are in SharePoint Online and you want to use SharePoint Framework and you're using classic pages still, actually SharePoint Framework works there as well from a web part perspective. Now, obviously, we want everybody to move to the modern because the modern is the one where we are adding investments, and we did a massive amount of announcements in Ignite, which we're not going to cover all of those today. We're going to concentrate today on the SharePoint Framework, and a week from now, we're going to concentrate on other areas as well. But modern pages, extensions and web parts, so headers, footer extensions, additional extensions, we're going to talk about those ones today as well. On list and libraries, we have extensions, so list view command sets and field customizers, and we're looking into extending the field customizer model as an example in the future. So all of that is evolving absolutely in the future as well. You can also create app pages. So app page is a kind of in quotes, a lockdown page. So it doesn't have multiple web parts. It has one web part which is taking the full screen. And that's an app page, and the end user cannot actually modify the web part or get rid of it. So it's a full screen experience, whatever you have designed to be available. And then obviously in the team side, we announced this one already in spring. You can actually create web parts which are actually Microsoft Teams tabs. So they don't actually have to be web parts. They are Teams tabs. And really targeted for the enterprise development because you can really easily get access to Microsoft Graph. You don't have to worry about hosting, operations, any of that stuff. We'll take all of that taken care of for you, which is really, really cool. Library component, which we demoed quite a few times in the course as well, works in all of these scenarios, so it doesn't matter where you are. It is an underlying, let's say, capability which is available for your design if you want to use that. Now, in 1.10, which is coming quite soon, it has the subject to change, but I don't think we're going to change this anymore. No. There's just a final disclaimer there. Yes. But new features go to the GA. Extensions, pre-allocated placeholders. We talked about this one a few times in the community calls already. I'm going to do a live demo in a second for that one, trying to explain what it actually means in practice. SharePoint Framework for Teams, so personal app support. So you no longer have to target the extensibility only for the Teams tabs, or sorry, channel tabs. You can target those to be personal apps as well. And I will show in practice what it means when it's exposed using the personal app model. SharePoint Framework for Teams, support for mobile app. We do not have a demo of that one today in here. And there was quite a lot of problems yesterday in the Luca session around that one. But the whole point is that the Microsoft Teams will, SharePoint Framework implemented tabs and all of that will work in a mobile experience as well. There's obviously that's quite new thing, and we keep on improving that as well. I think yesterday Alex Tarentiev from SharePoint LS said that the deep linking isn't quite yet working, but I think all of that is getting evolved and better in the future. And also when something is getting released and if we find a bug, we'll just keep on improving that and fixing those things. And then list notifications API moved to GA, and this basically means that your web part can subscribe to events. So whenever a new list item is getting created, your web part is getting notified on those things as well. So you can really have a dynamic experience, and the web part is updating automatically on a page, even though you don't actually do a refresh of the page. So super cool stuff as well. Preview features, a new extension, query suggestions. I will do a quick demo on that one as well during this call, but this already gives you an indication where we're heading with search, Microsoft Search extensibility. So the extensibility model for Microsoft Search will be based on SharePoint Framework, of course, because that's the future way of doing extensibility in the whole Office 365, not necessarily in the whole Microsoft 365, because that includes Windows, but who knows if we extend it in that side at some point. No promises over there, don't quote me on that one. And then the final piece, which we kind of demoed already in Build, Microsoft Build, building SharePoint, using SharePoint Framework to target also Office add-ins. So starting with the Outlook web access, but then you can absolutely have PowerPoint add-ins or Word add-ins and all of that being implemented using the exact same tool set, and we'll come back on that one later as well. The whole point, again, being here, the fact that as long as you learn the one tool set, you can target and customize and extend any of the experiences in Office 365 in a consistent way. So it's no longer just SharePoint, it is definitely all of the services, and more functionalities are coming in the future as well. Right, Luca?
Yes.
Was that a good way of selling that?
I think so. A little bit long, but
a little bit long.
Exactly, but was hitting the point.
Yeah. Good. So pre-allocated extensions, we've been having this slide quite a few times actually on the community calls. Whole point being on the fact that you're able to say that, hey, I will have an extension as an example, header extension, which will be wide of 50 pixels. So when we're loading a page, we'll allocate the 50 pixel space there. And then whenever the final piece, which is the extension, is getting loaded, the page doesn't move anymore. Because in the old experience, it moved whenever the 40, 50 pixel or whatever the height is got locked into the header section. So that's something which we talked about quite a few times in the past in these calls. That's coming in 1.10. And also the Office add-ins built using SharePoint Framework. We actually think we've been having this slide in the call as well, but the whole point being on the fact that you can use the exact same tooling, exact same technology, exact same advantages like accessing Microsoft Graph, authentication, all of that stuff, what we have in SharePoint Framework, when you are building Office add-ins for Outlook web access, and in future also for any of the other Office clients like PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. That's pretty much it for now. Really, the objective here is make sure that as a developer, you can concentrate actually on developing stuff rather than Azure AD permissions, hosting, CDN, all of that complex infrastructural things, which, by the way, we will take care of that taken care of for you. So you don't actually have to worry about hosting. We'll host it for you through the functionalities what we're having within the SharePoint side or within Office 365 side of the house. Now let's actually do a quick walkthrough of these features. So pre-allocated extension sizes in page rendered for SharePoint Framework and Office add-ins built for SharePoint Framework. So I'm going to jump on one of the test tenants, which I have here waiting. I have an application customizer here, a header application placeholder override. So we're adding here additional links related on group associated team sites, which is calendar files, inbox, notebook, and people. But when I load the page, you can actually see that the page keeps on moving. If we can actually get it, we have a way too fast network connectivity. Yeah, it's loading slightly too fast. The whole point on the fact that if it loads slightly too slower, you can actually see the page movement whenever the final piece and the header section is getting loaded. So that means that the page moves slightly down because we're rendering the 50 pixel wide functionality on the header. Now, using the pre-allocation, we actually allocate the space there based on your configuration in your extension, and then you can define that what is the height of that extension, and based on that you can then see that it's actually the page doesn't move anymore, and that's really the core capability in here. So in here you can actually see that the page doesn't actually jump and make movements when we're loading the page, but it's loading slightly too fast for you to actually realize that it's getting super polished on this side.
You can change that if you want. Click on F12.
See if I can. Okay. Oh, there's the movement. Okay.
But if you want, you can go to F12. You can go to network, and then there is. Can you make it a little bit longer, bigger? Sorry.
Where's the spinning off?
Undock.
Undock is over there. Sure.
Okay, so make it bigger. And click on this drop down where it says online. The drop down. Yeah, go there and go to slow 3G.
There we go. Good point. Good point. I've never thought about to be able to demo this so well. So okay, let's do this one more time. F5. Loading. You can see the site load, and there we go. That moved now down, and then there's the extension. So you can actually see that there's a movement of the page when we are reloading the page, and it moves. There we go, and it moved down on the page. Now, whenever we actually have this feature enabled, you do not see that movement because we allocate the assigned page already on server side. So the page doesn't jump that much. You probably have seen this within the SharePoint Online if you are behind of a slow connection. Now let me actually get back on not offline, in the online, so that should be fine.
Yes.
So the next demo. Yeah, exactly. Now, then the second thing what I wanted to show at this moment is the Office add-ins, and we kind of show the Outlook web access add-in. So let me actually create a new message in here. Let's actually send a message to Luca as an example. And I'm going to spin up the Office add-in from here. It is an SPFx template, so this is a relatively raw alpha version of things, but it's already connecting to the SharePoint. I could actually have a drop down to which side is actually connecting. So now it's a URL, and I say connect there to that URL. And then I can select, for example, attachment. So I can say I want to have this presentation attached to my email. I want to have that presentation attached to my email as well. So I'm communicating directly with SharePoint. Obviously, that the functionality in here could be communicating with any system, even though it's been implemented using SharePoint Framework technologies. So, but all of the goodies what we have within the SharePoint Framework from a technology perspective, you can take advantage of that one now within the implementation of Office add-ins as well. So really cool stuff. I'm not going to spend too much time on it obviously right now. We will have a hands-on labs, videos, all of that queued up whenever the 1.10 comes, and you can start building this stuff by yourself as well. So you want to talk about something on the as a summary on 1.10, Luca, on
Sure.
the features, just to pinpoint those.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Vesa. So pre-allocated placeholder, as Vesa pointed out, is coming out. It gives you the ability to avoid the jumpiness. Was one of the things that you guys asked for us for a long time. It works for both the placeholders, so it works for both top and bottom, and you will be able to use that on the existing code. You don't have to recompile, you don't have to change your code. It's just a change in the manifest, and that's the only thing that is needed. In terms of personal app support, basically, did you show the personal app, or you want to?
It's coming soon.
Okay, so you want me to talk about everything, and then that's what I wanted to check.
Sorry. Did I? Actually, I didn't. So let me actually get back in here. Good point. Thank you. So should have actually had that one on the list of things as well. So let's actually do the full list of things. So the personal apps and Microsoft Teams tabs. So obviously we've been having the Microsoft Teams tabs implementation support in SharePoint Framework for quite a long time. So you can implement this one as a SharePoint Framework, well, web part or a Microsoft Teams tab, implemented using the same technology. But now starting from 1.10, you can actually create personal apps as well. So I can actually target the application to be a personal app, then in the app catalog, say sync to Teams, and it's going to, based on settings, it's going to publish that as a personal apps as well. So you can actually see the leads being then on the left navigation, which is that it's actually being executed in the context of the persona rather than in the context of a team or team channel, which hopefully makes sense in this scenario. And obviously it works exactly the same way. It's just a matter of what is the context and how we're accessing that, not as part of the team or team channel, as part of a personal application in the team application as such. And then the final piece, which is coming to beta as well, right, is the query extension. What do we call this? Query
modifications.
Query modifications. Okay. So what you can do is that whenever you execute a query, you can modify the query before it's getting translated or executed in the Microsoft search. And what I did here, and this demo is basically, even though I executed the revenue, we actually included additional translations of the same word, and we're getting a different results based on that. So we included a translations of Spanish and I don't know what the other language is.
This was Turkish.
Turkish and Spanish. And then even though I used the search revenue, because I had my query suggest query execution extension, I included additional translations of that word to be also be included in the results, like in this case, these two words. And that's why then when we execute against the Microsoft Search corpus, we get all of those results out from there as well. So quite simple example of how do we modify things. You can come up with probably multiple different ways of doing that as well, or different scenarios where this would be useful. But basically you intercept what is getting executed from the text box, and then you can modify that, you can extend that, you can do whatever you want with that before it's getting executed against Microsoft Search, and then the results are coming out. That is the step number one related on Microsoft Search extensions. We do know that you want more than that, and we're in the journey of defining all of the next steps, and there will be more extensibility in Microsoft Search as well, built on using the same familiar technical stack.
Yes, and if you guys want to know why Turkish and Spanish, is because the dev lead of the feature is from Spain, and the PM manager for the feature is from Turkish.
Yeah, so it's not a coincidence.
Correct, it's not. I mean, it used to be, but it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the recap. Thank you, Vesa. So we talk about the placeholder, located placeholder. Now let's talk about SPFx for Teams. All the capabilities in SPFx will be available in Teams personal app as well, in the same way that they're available for Teams channel tabs apps. Works both on web as well as the rich client on the desktop and the rich client on the mobile. Those are personal apps, so they do not support configuration. This is nothing to do with SPFx. This is currently the behavior of Microsoft Teams. Every personal app in Microsoft Teams do not have a configuration experience. So when you will design your solution to be an Teams personal app, keep in mind that you don't have any configuration that you can provide. And it's not just a matter of having a canvas for creating the configuration. There is no configuration storage behind that, so keep that in mind. And because it's a personal app, it's completely and fully integrated in the app management that Teams provide through the Teams central administration. And then finally, for this slide, support for mobile. Finally, we are getting mobile support for iOS and Android. It works for both personal app as well as channel tabs apps. And it is coming for this November release of Teams Mobile Rich Client.
Yeah. Two questions from the chat, which is varied questions, just to recap this as well, because that's not getting recorded in the recording of this session. Dragan is asking, is there a specific configuration option on SPFx side to expose web part as a personal tab?
That's a very good question, and the answer is yes. There will be a new supported attribute that you will have to select in order to show and in order to surface your application as a personal tab. And the way that you surface, actually, good point, it will be exactly the same way that we are doing today. You go to the app catalog, you deploy your package, you click Sync to Teams. Our code will be able to understand if it's a personal tab or if it's a channel tab app. Click Sync to Teams, create the manifest in Teams, and everything works.
Yeah, And obviously, if you define the same application to be both as a channel tab or a personal tab, that's possible, and then we generate two different manifests.
I think the answer is yes.
I think Graham said that, yeah,
yes,
that works.
I think the answer is yes.
Now, there was a question from Russell, actually, can personal apps be targeted so only certain users can see them?
The answer is yes. This has nothing to do with SharePoint. There is a feature on Teams that allows to do that. It's called Teams Application Policies. You go to the Teams Admin Center through the Admin 365 Admin Center, and you can create policies for users, and you can target personal apps to specific users. And the SPFx solutions absolutely play in this kind of game.
Yep. Then Arnold Stacy is asking, is there a link to updates from the? Is there a link for all of the updates from Ignite? And the answer is unfortunately no. We'll work on the blog posts related after next week, or as part of the 1.10 release, where we'll sum up what's coming. There's so many blog posts from Monday which were released related on multiple different areas, which relate on a dev and not dev and all of that. So we understand that it's a really difficult thing to keep up with all of the announcements. Now, related on that one, from a week from now, when we have the general SharePoint Dev SIG call, I will try to cover all of the non-SharePoint Framework announcements from that call. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff over there. Now, a few other things, feature set recap, so search result extensibility, query modifications. Like I said, this is the step number 1. You can add synonyms, you can translate or additional intelligence when you're executing user roles, location. You can filter based on a user, as an example, or custom business rules.
You can basically have whatever you want, and you will be able to basically inject these rules through code. Important to notice, and again, just like Vesa mentioned before, those are dev previews features. So by definition, please use that to kick the tires and provide us feedback. But there will be things that are a little bit less smooth than released feature. Specifically for this functionality, in order for the query modification to work, you will have to create a custom search page. The way you create this custom search page by this time will be to create a new page and run a PowerShell to change the page layout. And the web part is supposed only to work on this custom search page.
Yeah.
Again, this is a current limitation for that preview. Do not expect that to be the case by the time we GA.
Yeah, so this feature is in preview. It's not going GA as part of the 1.10.
Correct.
There was a question related on the search verticals and other extensibility options for search. Let's cover that on a separate discussion, a separate community call. Mikael Svensson, who's responsible of the search extensibility, will drop by and we'll talk about those things as well. The Microsoft Search and the experience is not quite optimal yet for the modern side of the house, but it's moving along and it's getting more and more love and support from our side as well. And then the SPFx for Office, support for Office add-ins starts with Outlook Web Access, because that's the most widely extended or customized experience.
At least among the web clients, yes.
Yeah, and then it's going to be supported, it will be supported in Outlook Desktop.
Working on that.
Working on. So, but it's intended to be supported in the desktops as well.
You are correct. So the feature is intended to be supported widely across all the clients. Doesn't matter if it's web or rich clients.
Yeah.
There are things that needs to be fixed. And that's what we are working on.
There are things we need to include on the desktop clients to make these things work more seamlessly.
Correct.
From end user perspective, but we are all working on moving to that direction,
yes.
So, which is good. Then we talk about the support for Fluid Framework. Do you want to talk about the slides, or should I talk about the slides, or either way? So Fluid Framework is something which was announced in Build as a upcoming, how would I put it, a real-time collaboration platform. So you're able to share actions and events between multiple people working on a same document or a same component. So this is a framework which you can take advantage within your SharePoint Framework implementation. It's also behind of the modern upcoming Office experiences and all of that. So it is right now it's kind of quite technical thingy, but it's getting more approachable by end users as well. And in SharePoint Framework, you can take advantage of that. If you think about the journey, you actually explained this really well.
If you guys think about SPFx and the world that we built when SPFx was created, we started targeting SharePoint, and the first release of SPFx was all about web parts. How do you build web parts? How do you test the web part while you're using the workbench? And how do you basically use JavaScript and open source and cross-platform tools as a tool chain? So Yeoman, Gulp, and your own framework and TypeScript. That was a huge success. Then moving forward, what we did as part of SPFx, so we started adding capabilities and functionalities. And the first thing we did, we added access to Microsoft Graph and Azure Active Directory web applications. Then when we thought we had a good platform, we started extending canvases. From SharePoint, we now move it across and beyond, above and beyond SharePoint, and we started with Teams, and we started with the Teams tabs and Microsoft SharePoint SPFx components. And then now, with the release of 1.10, even if in Dev Preview, we are GAing the personal tabs in Teams, but we are Dev Previewing the ability to access Outlook, Word, and then in the future Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And this again by exposing all the capabilities and functionalities, and by using a common tool chain that gives you these abilities. And in the future, you can imagine that because of that, now we have a new set of APIs and functionalities, which is the Fluid Preview Canvas and the Fluid SDK. And the idea is to have exactly the same tool that you will use to build your component, and your component will be able to work across multiple canvases, one component, one runtime, and the framework will provide the smartness to give you the ability to consume the right API or the right SDK depending on which canvas you are. So, for example, the Fluid capabilities and one thing that is called the DDS, which is the dynamic data structure, only lives in Fluid. You will not be able to leverage DDS in SharePoint or Teams or Outlook or PowerPoint, but you will be able to do that in Fluid. But you as a developer will not care about that because the framework will provide the right abstraction. So you will use the same API, and the API will behave differently depending on which canvas the component is being used.
So just to reiterate, you're already on a Thursday flow. It's like, I want to get home. But as you might have actually seen on the middle section, enterprise development model is now saying yo at Microsoft 365, which is a code name. Actually, it doesn't exist right now. It is fully a code name for now, but the whole point being on the fact that we want to provide one centralized, consistent enterprise development tool for extending Microsoft 365 experiences. So you as a developer, as long as you know SharePoint Framework or the technical web stack development model, you can then choose, we will give you an easy access on the underlying SDKs. You'll do basically context.sdks.office, and both you have access on Office SDKs and the context of Office, or .SharePoint, and you have access there and all of that.
So DDS library,
and DDS library and Fluid. Yes. So everything is basically based on the same implementation model. You implement once, and then you decide where you want to surface your stuff, and voila, it just works. Rather than having multiple different ways of extending per individual application. So this should be a massive, well, I think it's a dramatic and massive new value add-on for every single partner.
Yeah. Do you want to jump to the demo? Because
yes.
10 minutes.
Yep. Let's actually go to the demo. Well, basically, we can't jump down. We talked about actually on that one. Let's go to the demo. Okay, so Luca is going to share his screen. Yep, I can see it.
Cool, perfect. So, so this should be familiar with you. This is basically a project that was scaffolded by using an early version of what Vesa was mentioning being the next version of your Microsoft SharePoint. It scaffolds exactly the same thing. The directory structure on your list should be something very familiar with you. You have a configuration file, multiple of them, and you have package.json, you have the root of your code. This example is a component that is using React. And you can see that basically this component, you will see that working. It's very simple. It's a text box and a slider. You move the slider, the text size grows or shrinks, and you put text over there and everything works. And I'm using these properties to persist this information on the property bag when you are in SharePoint, or you persist this information in the SharePoint when you are in SharePoint. But these dot properties, when the component runs in a Fluid-enabled canvas, just like Fluid Preview Canvas tool that was announced this week in Ignite, it takes advantages of DDS, which means that if you use this component in SharePoint, it will behave in the same way that it behaved before. But if you deploy this component in Fluid Preview Canvas, it will behave slightly differently. You will see how. But basically, you create this code, you package, deploy, put the package in the app catalog. The admin has the full application lifecycle management experience that has for every other SPFx component or packages. And now the component is ready to be used. People that are joining the Fluid Dev Preview program will be able to do that. Everyone else, this code is fortunately is not available for them. It's not available on 1.10. It's not available in 1.10, even if it is in plus beta. This is something that it's just available for internal members of the Fluid Dev Preview program. And for this member, the way that this component will surface in Fluid Preview Canvas is that in the package.json, you will, in the manifest.json, you will be able to select and say experimental fluid equal true. This experimental data, it's something that we are introducing as part of SPFx. We are just using this for now for this functionality, but you can imagine that in the future, if we need to have something that only target plus beta features, just like personal tabs and Office on SPFx component for this time, we may be able to use experimental data for these kind of things. Again, it's a new functionality that gives us freedom and flexibility to add configuration option that only surface and work for dev preview functionalities. This time, we're using this for Fluid integration. So do that, package solution, everything works. Now, let's say that I am able to go back to my Fluid canvas. This is Fluid preview. Write some text here. And then the interesting things about Fluid, which is basically the blazing fast configuration co-authoring capabilities that Vesa was mentioning before. It's just like you can see that now I am here and I have the same text and I can put some text there. And independently where I am, the things is super fast. I can add first-party components, so I can add a table surface in both place. I create value 1. The moment I move to the cell get updated. This is an intended behavior of this component to surface the fact that you, as a developer, can decide when to signal the fact that something has been changed and you want everyone else that is joining to your session to basically get the updates. Same here, and move, etc. So you got the point, right? So I go back, and now I have a first-party component here. Let's remove this. And now for reference, let's say that I can add my component that I created. Let's call that the kitchen demo. And here it is. You can see that the component is in both instances. And now I write some text. And because these dot properties in the code that I was showing before is hooked on DDS, the framework understands that this component is now surfaced in a canvas that understands what DDS is, and is using that path, and it gives the ability for the component to participate in the dynamic data model that Fluid provides, and the component automatically has this blazing co-authoring experience, just like anything else in a Fluid-enabled canvas, just like the Fluid preview canvas. Same component on a SharePoint page, you go to the web part, you click plus, you add the component, and the component is standalone. SharePoint doesn't understand Fluid, SharePoint doesn't understand DDS. The component now will use the current dot properties behavior of the SPFx. But this, again, to reinforce the fact that you can build your component and your component can work in every canvas, no matter what. And you as a developer, can decide if the component behaves differently on different canvases, but if you don't want, the component basically will be transparent, and the framework will do that for you. So, any other questions? No, good. So, but now there is more. One of the other functionality that Fluid capabilities provide is the ability to connect a component across multiple canvases. So you can basically not only create a component, and in this case, we have two instances that point to the same file, which is the SPFx in Fluid preview.fluid file. But one other thing that I can do in Fluid, I can create another file, and I can copy one component from one file and paste it to the other file. And then this component is connected, and every changes that I make on one file automatically reflect on the component on the other file. And as SPFx, we said, well, wait a minute, why don't we leverage these capabilities and try to provide fluid experiences by using this connected copy-paste functionality to canvases that don't understand Fluid yet? That's the work that we did, and let's see how it works. So if I switch to another desktop, session has ended. Thank you, SharePoint. Now I can basically go back here, and I have the same file. As you can see, I was opening here and I was working, and this is the same text that I was writing before. Now I can select this component. I can copy. I can go here on SharePoint, add some text, and hopefully I can Ctrl-V, and yes, I can see that my component is now here. And because this is a component that is connected to this document, DDS should be there, and it is. And I can see that now my component is able to do something different. And because I'm in SharePoint, and because I provide contextualized information, I can see that when my component surface in SharePoint, you can do something different. In this case, I can pull the information of the current user, and I'm augmenting the text in the SharePoint. This augmentation doesn't happen in Fluid. But this is, again, because the component also has a contextualized experience that SPFx provides, so the component can behave differently even if it's been passed from a different file. But me and Vesa have bitched you for the past hour in terms of SPFx goes above and beyond SharePoint. So we thought it was interesting to do something more than SharePoint. So here I have PowerPoint, and in PowerPoint I have my awesome presentation, which is really awesome because I only have 2 slides. So if I go to these other slides and I select the slide and I do Ctrl-V, I can see that by leveraging the SPFx in add-ins work that we have done that is part of 1.10 release, I can now add PowerPoint here, or PPT actually. And now I can see PowerPoint suddenly behave like SharePoint and Fluid. And again, this is a custom component. The code, you've seen the code a second ago. As that code was written by using SPFx, and the component is behaving just like a Fluid component. And finally, Fluid gives also the ability to do copy-paste in a different way. They have this interesting experience where you copy component, there is a kind of a UX experience, the component is selected. And try to go to Outlook Web Access. I can go Ctrl-V in Outlook Web Access. And finally, I have Outlook Web Access. So now I have the same component that I was creating using SharePoint Framework, or the evolution of, it is still SharePoint Framework, by using the evolution of this tool chain. I use this component in the Fluid Preview canvas. I can copy from the Fluid Preview canvas, and I can paste this component on SharePoint page, PowerPoint Online, Outlook Web Access, and the component is fully capable to leverage dynamic data structure and Fluid.
And what's really cool, if you think about even the Outlook scenarios, okay, so what's happening here, but you can actually send that component to somebody as an email.
Yes.
And then they open up that component and they actually see the same connectivity is still there. They can see the same information and they can start modifying if the component is exposing editing capabilities. They can modify that one and it's all getting saved and collaborated and reflected the changes between the different areas.
I closed the document, I reopened the document, everything is there. And remember, I had the 2 instances of the document in different desktop before, just because I'm showing you that I'm not cheating. Here it is, same text is there as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a pretty cool setup, and we do apologize. We went 1 minute or a few minutes on top of time. So there's a lot of questions related on framework. One thing what came earlier on the call, I just want to make sure that we don't miss this. Christian asked, what about supporting SharePoint Framework on a mobile client, SharePoint mobile client?
So
and Azure
SharePoint
AD
Framework or Fluid?
SharePoint Framework first.
On SharePoint mobile.
Yeah.
I know that there is work that the mobile guys needs to do in order to be able to get access to the token, and that work is happening. So that should be able to come pretty soon. It's just a matter of resources.
Cool.
There is no technical limitation or reason why that should not happen. Cool. It's just a matter of the right resources at the right time.
And then looking on the chat, people are pretty amazed on what they actually saw right now on the screen, which is really cool. There was a scalability question related on Fluid. All of that is still in alpha, so we can't provide an exact number.
That's actually a good concern and top of mind, and this is one of the reasons why we are announcing, and we are just releasing that as a developer preview, which is private. Yep. So it's invitation only.
Yeah. Then how do you get to the preview is a question of us.
Yes. So the Fluid team will share a survey at the end of Ignite where there will be a QR code to scan. And once you've done that, you will be able to access it.
I think I actually have the link already. So I'll include it in the blog post.
Be sure that you have the link for ESPC.
Well, for ESPC, absolutely we'll share it out.
So if you guys are in SPC, you will see this again because Vesa will be able to demo that.
And obviously, if there's a URL which can be shared, we'll share it tomorrow in a blog post. We'll talk about it in a monthly community call next week as well. Let me actually jump back on my slides. So I'll close up with a few slides because I want to call out what's actually happening next. We're not going to actually go through. There's one more slide around what's happening after 1.10 release. So nothing really surprising there. We talk about these things, what's happening as well. So store support is coming, unified toolset is coming. Just a reminder, next week, Tuesday, we do have a monthly community call coming up. Melissa Torres, who is the mother of hubs, and the site designs is actually being the special guest on the monthly call. So we're going to talk about the latest news around hub sites and associated hub sites and latest on site designs and all of the related topics over there. So that's on next Tuesday and 12th of November at 8 a.m. Pacific. And then obviously next SharePoint Framework call is from 2 weeks from now, and next general SharePoint Dev SIG call is on November 14th. We'll continue around the SIG Ignite announcements on that call as well. So this call, we only have time to go through the latest on SharePoint Framework. But that's it around the topics from today. We do apologize. We went 3 minutes on top of the hour.
Yeah, story of my life. Just so you know, guys, I went 7 minutes late yesterday to my session, 15, so you have been lucky.
15.
No, it was 10, and I started 3 minutes later.
Okay, fair point.
Okay.
Fair point. But I think that's it. We're not going to have time for Q&A. That's it for now.
Thank you for having me, guys. That was really appreciated.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Patrick, helping out with slides and setting up things. And let me stop sharing as well.
Great job, guys.
Thank you,
guys. Appreciate it.
And we do apologize. We probably missed some questions on all of that. Let's try to follow up on things in social media or in other channels. And definitely next Wednesday, Tuesday, monthly call. Next Thursday, the SharePoint Dev Generator call will be again on a normal time zones and all of that. So that should help on answering all of the questions during the call as well. Thank you also being super active on the call. That's always super helpful as well. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.